Dave, let's talk about another K-pop artist and really a king of K-pop, RM from BTS, getting that final album out before he goes on to do his military time over in
hmm
South Korea, and he's dropping Indigo this past Friday. Were you pleased with what you got?
Yes. I was digging RM's Indigo,
Yes.
man. I like this quite a bit. What about you?
Yeah, I think there's like a point in the album where there's a bit of a some some swings at some different genres that didn't totally work for me, but the first half of it is really really strong in my opinion, and then he kind of brings it back around with a couple of similar tracks at the end. So I think there's some songs in the middle that didn't really work for me so well, but the stuff we get at the top is just like, how could you not enjoy it?
hmm Yeah, no, I think well, I had a lot of anticipation for this. As we know, BTS on temporary hiatus. They've announced that they're all gonna make their plans to do their military service after they all do their solo drops, and then it sounds like the band's looking to reconvene together in 2025. The military service is like a year and a half commitment, so it's going to be a while. But in the interim, we got the J Hope solo album, which we were quite surprised in a good way by earlier this
Mhm.
year. Jin released a solo single and is about to do the military service very soon. And now we have the RM album. And I think I always gravitated towards him early on. I think a big part of it, like, as a Westerner, like he was the most fluent English speaker. So like it was easy to like, I think, get attached to him as like an individual, as a personality. But I've always really enjoyed his rapping. Like I always thought he had really strong flow and presence on the mic as one of the main rappers of BTS. And I had heard his last mixtape Mono in 2018, which I thought was pretty good. But I was definitely curious, like, what would this RM solo be, post BTS break? And I think because it actually surprised me a bit with, like you said, like he's trying a few different things on this record, which I was surprised to see in a good way, you know. And man, I think I think he kind of earns like the reputation he's had as, he's one of the chief writers of BTS. He's a co-writer on damn near every song they've ever made. He produces as well. He's like that whole package when it comes to like a K-pop idol. So him finally getting to make something he really wants to make, which is what he's talked about a ton in the press leading up to this, needing that creative reset after 9 years of BTS and being so famous. And I think RM specifically also having to be a spokesman for the whole band and become a spokesman for Korean culture in the West. And he's spoken about the challenges they've all faced. They've been put in front of the United Nations and the White House. And it's like, I don't know if this is all for us or we're the most qualified to do this, but it's always been RM who I think has had to bear the brunt of that responsibility as the one who was most fluent as an English speaker. So I was just curious to see, like, what would you bring into your music that you really wanted to make before you have to, of course, go off to the army for a bit. So I think meta wise, there was just a lot of interest on my part going into this, which I don't necessarily have for all the other guys in BTS.
I think that he completely delivers on this, and right from the get go, you get Erica Badu, then you get Anderson Paak back to back. Just a hell of a way to fucking introduce yourself
Flex.
in your solo career. But those first three, Yun, Still Life, and All Day, are just impeccable in my opinion. Just really, really strong songs. Erica Badu singing the hook on Yun is just fantastic. Still Life sounds so like Anderson Pocky in the best way possible,
Yeah,
and RM fits
lively.
into it so well. And then All Day is so smooth and like energetic. It's like, how can you really not love those first three? I don't know.
Totally. And I think what's cool about this record, too, imagine All Day featuring Tableau, and you have other people on this record, like Eugene later on Wildflower, which seems to be the big hit here. These are Korean artists that are not on HYBE Big Hit. These are not like BTS label mates.
Hmm.
RM is actually making music with not label mate Koreans. And like you don't see that all the time in K-pop music where the label has a lot of control over that. And I think that was just like really exciting to me where it's like you have a song like All Day. Tableau is like RM's like Korean hip hop OG in a sense, someone he's a big fan of who is like kind of a forefather of his. And I mean, I think the flow on that track is so damn good from both of
Yeah.
them, you know? And that's just really cool to see. A song like Wildflower, Eugene is a Korean rock star, a Korean rock band. Bringing someone like that in, and I was like, man, these vocals on the feature, some 2000s emo vibes to me.
Hmm.
Pretty passionate, you have to think. Um, so yeah, I was quite pleased with the guests. Obviously, I'm not being very familiar with most of them, but I was like, wow, this is. I think it's just it came across as quite inspired to me.
Yeah, I agree with you on Wildflower. That and even the last song, number two, with Park Ji Yoon, I thought were really strong ways to end it. Number two is just so like catchy in terms of its like melody, you know, the da 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 da. Like you're just like it's like a elevator music, but in like the most catchy, wonderful way possible. I think the times when things didn't really work so well for me is when he tries to turn it down. And, you know, potentially if I knew what he was singing about and I understood the language, I'd have a different take on it. But
Mhm.
for me, if you're not really bringing the energy and you're slowing it down, it's a pretty quick skip for me a lot of the time. So right after All Day, you get Forgetful with Kim Sawal, and then Closer with Paul Blanco and Mahalia, and both
Yeah,
of those were tracks that I was like just not feeling as much.
yeah, I didn't feel those as much either. Although I do think on Closer, the Paul Blanco singing, like I thought the vocals were quite strong. Kind of reminded me of like a Rod Wave type in terms
Mm.
of like an
Yeah, he's got that like
emotional, like
wobble in his
yeah, like
voice.
sad singing, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think then after that you have Change Part Two, which is like a brief song, but it's also a sequel track to a random RM song from 2017 that he made with Wale of all people. Um, Things change, people change, everything change. It's like okay, I get what you're going to. It's a nice lead up into Lonely, which I think Lonely to me is my favorite track on Indigo
Ah.
because it's very lively production, right? More electronic, but you have like this acoustic strumming. But then you get into the chorus, and you have RM saying, "I'm fucking lonely," but it's like this upbeat production. And I actually really love that juxtaposition of these moody lyrics with this like lively production. And RM spoke to Variety about this song and saying that he wrote this song earlier this year in April when he was stuck in a hotel in Las Vegas. If we remember, the Permission to Dance on Stage tour happened. BTS performs for a week at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas and makes like $35 million. Meanwhile, RM can't leave the hotel and he writes this song about how he was actually feeling while that was all going down. I was like, shit, dang. I understand why he wanted to make something for him in the
Mhm.
form of this solo record, you know? It makes some sense. He's had a busy 9 years.
Yeah, definitely. Um, Again, I really think for a solo album, I was just impressed with this. You know, I think like you laid out really well in the preamble to this review. He just is a really talented member of BTS and just K-pop and musician in general. And I think you really see his talents come across on this. And even if it didn't hit fully for us, I'd like to hear people that actually do know the languages take on some of the slower songs, and if maybe
Yeah.
some of those lyrics are really meaningful or how they came across. It's hard to judge the songwriting for us.
No, totally. And I think of like some of the most popular BTS songs are songs that I don't really connect with because they're slower. But like BTS Army like rides for songs like Spring Day, which are super slow and emotional,
Hmm.
right? So I would not be shocked to hear that BTS fans do dig these slower songs, in fact, because as we said, like RM knows his way around making a song that's quite well established. So yeah, I'd imagine he's gonna get into the military service and get it out of the way pretty soon. Um, just get it done, you know. And I think he's established enough as a soloist that when he comes back, while the rest of the guys are still in the throes of the military stuff, I would not be shocked to see RM start doing guest spots, right? Mainstream stuff, right? Like he was
Totally.
doing press like a month ago with Pharrell for Rolling Stone, right? Like I think like they're in the music biz at this point, so
Hmm.
I'm sure we'll see RM do more solo work when he comes back before BTS returns. But I'm also wondering what's next for the BTS solo projects, right? We've gotten three so far. if you, counting the Jin single. I think Suga's the most established soloist in terms of previous solo work, but I can't help but be pretty interested in what the Jungkook solo album's going to be because he was the number one K-pop soloist this year in
Mm,
2022, just based off a few singles and like the Charlie Puth feature and stuff like that.
mm.
And he just seems to be so famous as a soloist. I'm curious what that one will be like. Um, but I'm sure we'll find out about it soon. It sounds like there's a plan for all these guys to stagger their releases and then go off to train. So we'll be hearing from somebody soon, I imagine.
So be following us so we can you can catch that review for Jungkook when it hits the streets. Also follow our Nostalgia Best of 2022 playlist on Spotify.